Flint, Michigan's water crisis. Some history and actors that played a crucial role in the cause of the Flint, Michigan water crisis were political, economically, and historical. Governor of Michigan installed an emergency manager who would make all fiscal decisions in rural local government. Flint began to receive Lake Huron's water via pipeline from the Detroit Water and Sewage Department. Flint did not use any anti-corrosion inhibitors, and historically, Flint, Michigan has seen much growth and decline economically. Some specific populations that were marginalized were low-income, predominantly minority families, as well as children. A quantitative study was done in 2019 by Grossman and Slutsky regarding overall health at birth. Results find that Flint fertility rates decreased by 12%, and overall health at birth also decreased. The need for a social change for a changing environment has occurred after this crisis in Flint, Michigan. Data suggests that there has been an increase in struggles with symptoms relating to PTSD, depression, and other mental health disorders. Kruger in 2017 conducted a study regarding PTSD, and studies show perceptions of lower quality tap water correlated with higher PTSD symptoms. Another quantitative study was conducted by Dennis in 2023 that reveals a disparate burden of pediatric mental health disorders and exemplifies the health inequities vulnerable populations face.
Flint's water crisis was one of deception and cover-ups and a result of systematic racism and discrimination. This can be seen in state officials' decision to save money without concern for providing environmental protections to Flint's community, which was a low-income and minority community. It was known that Flint's water was highly corrosive, but the decision was made to make the switch and put the water in the homes of Flint residents anyways. When residents expressed their concerns about the water being discolored and tasting and smelling bad with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, their response was often one of aggressive dismissal, belittlement, and attempts to discredit these efforts and the individuals involved. Looking at how the discrimination was carried out, the state-appointed emergency manager replaced local decision makers in Flint, which removed all the checks and balances with public accountability that comes with public decision-making. The Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and Michigan Department of Health and Human Services produced flawed water sampling data, failed to provide accurate information to the governor's office and the public, and did not respond appropriately when given information from environmental health and medical professionals. After their initial attempt to cover up everything, the Environmental Protection Agency officials and state officials in Michigan then defensively either tried to avoid responsibility or minimize the extent of the damage. A study by Muhammad et al. 2018 of Flint residents' perspective of the water crisis found that they viewed the water crisis as racism related. And Flint's youth described Flint as a Black city where historical and contemporary forms of racial stratification persist, and the contamination of the city's water as a form of genocide targeting Blacks. Other studies completed to demonstrate the evidence of discrimination in Flint's water crisis. One was Evans et al. 2021. They completed a study on toxic exposure to lead among Flint residents based on race and other established environmental health vulnerabilities of gender and single-parent family structure. From this study, it was found that blocks exposed to lead service lines connected parcels had higher concentrations of single-parent Latinx families, single-mother Latina families, and single-father Black families. A study by Chase et al. 2021 also conducted a quantitative study assessing physical and mental health outcomes in correlation with the respondents' race and ethnicity. The study concluded that there were significantly higher reports of higher blood levels and symptoms such as skin rashes, hair loss, and nausea, as well as higher levels of anxiety and depression among Flint's Black residents versus Flint's white residents. This evidence can also be seen in children's lead levels in a study completed by Hannah Atisha et al. 2015. In this study, elevated blood lead level differences were analyzed before and after Flint introduced the corrosive water source. The results concluded that the percentage of children with elevated lead levels increased after the water source change, particularly in socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods. So looking at the policies and decisions that led to the crisis, on April 25th, 2014, Flint switched its drinking water supply from Detroit's water system to the Flint River in a cost-saving move. Before permitting the switch, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality did not require the Flint Water Department to treat the water with anti-corrosion control measures that would have cost the city approximately $140 a day and would have averted the crisis. And then when E. coli was detected in Flint's water, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality addressed the problem by increasing chlorine levels, which just made the matters worse. Some policies that played a role in the water crisis is Michigan's Local Financial Stability and Choice Act, also known as Public Act 436, which places cities under financial duress under the control of a state-appointed emergency manager. Emergency managers are empowered to act in place of the local government and oftentimes make fiscal decisions without consideration of the public's health and welfare. There's also the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act's lead and copper rule, which also has provisions and standards that create a policy environment that facilitates decision-making that is reactionary, prioritizes cost effectiveness, and includes the public and tolerates risk. The lead and copper rule also has no enforceable health-based standard and does not protect any individuals or household from exposure to elevated lead levels. An agency that played its role as well was the Environmental Protection Agency, who do nothing when water samples above the federal action levels were presented, and Flint residents and the National Resources Defense Council petitioned for an emergency federal response. What is clear regarding the Flint water crisis is the failure of the government and local agencies to act. This was demonstrated in a study by Schvez et al. 2017, which analyzed the actions of the federal and state government and local agencies in the reporting of national, state, and local newspapers on the crisis to determine accountability and transparency. Results indicated that the government on all levels did not properly solve the Flint water crisis and completely failed to be accountable to Flint residents. The state of Michigan attempted to dismiss reports by issuing a counter report, and the state sought ways to discredit or invalidate findings. The local news media also did not investigate the reports more deeply and continued to rely just on government sources. The strengths of Flint residents. Flint residents are leaders in responding to a public health crisis, organizing against environmental injustices, and leading new directions of scientific inquiry. This was demonstrated in a study by Hicks et al. 2020. In this study, they assessed the consequences of the water crisis and the strengths of individuals in the community through it. The conclusion was that despite declines in health and mental health of Flint residents, they were able to engage in solution-focused coping and other adaptive capacities. Flint residents truly showed remarkable strength and resilience following the water crisis, coming together as a community and through a grassroots effort advocating for accountability and justice. They organized to form the Flint Democracy Defense League and organized marches, protests, and town hall meetings. They spoke out at public meetings and events, and they also engaged in social media to elevate their voices about the negative impacts of the water. Flint residents collected their own community data and developed a website to provide information on the water situation. They were able to gather 26,000 signatures that they gave to the mayor of Flint, demanding to switch back to the Detroit water system. Flint residents were able to get expert environmental activists as well to help guide them and further their efforts, and eventually filed multiple lawsuits to get their rightful justice. Social Work's response. The National Association of Social Workers responded to the Flint water crisis by stating that it was a clear case of environmental injustice that triggered health disparities. They also stated that given the magnitude of the water crisis in Flint, it is time for federal, state, and local government to coordinate their efforts and financial resources to address the infrastructure of Flint's water system and to prevent and treat health conditions that are caused by exposure to lead and other toxins in the water. The Michigan chapter issued a call to action and to have their members work alongside Flint residents and public officials providing volunteer services. And on a national level, the chapter concentrated on meeting with federal officials regarding concerns and needed resources.
Environmental justice. Despite efforts to raise awareness of the water crisis happening in Flint, little accountability was taken. In December 2014, Flint received an EPA violation for the water. Although they treated it with chemicals, later found in testing it was not reported to be safe. The emergency manager commissioned a report on the safety of the water and rebuffed an offer from DWSD to return Flint to service from Lake Huron water. This then began the distrust in government, and it became affected. In 2015, the team reported much higher levels of lead than previously reported, noting that Flint River's water was many times more corrosive than the DWSD water. Hannah Atisha then holds a press conference on 2024-2015 to report her findings of a substantial increase in blood lead levels in children following the water switch. In the aftermath of this press conference, the Flint water crisis launched into national attention, creating public outrage and prompting swift governmental response as communities grappled with devastating implications of lead exposures on their residents.
Actions to combat the issue. Social workers are crucial for the recovery and healing of Flint. Through the development of a task force, they can look at long-term strategies and link those at risk to needed services. In Flint, social workers can go door to door with volunteers to look for those at risk and in the most need, such as the elderly, those with a disability, or those without transportation, or even without a computer to be able to access information. They can help them access the resources needed, educate them on water safety and health risks, and help them obtain water filters and fresh water. They are also key for providing counseling services and emotional support in response to the trauma caused by the water crisis. Social workers can also serve on a task force with National Association of Social Workers to develop better strategies to respond more effectively and efficiently to the crisis, and to demand better coordination among local, state, and federal leaders in relief efforts. In order to prevent future crises, the social workers and task force can also call for a repeal of the emergency manager law to keep control and decisions within the hands of local leaders and government. They can also be helpful in examining policies that contributed to the water crisis and advocating for changes in those policies.